Are you in the mood for some chocolate cake? Well, I have a treat for you. I have a recipe for a low-fat chocolate cake. Now, I got this idea after watching the video of Alicia's on Mind Over Munch, and she was making some brownies that were low-fat. To check out Alicia's brownie recipe, you can click the description box below my video and I'll have a link to her video. Now, the thing is, when I made the secret ingredient, which is prune puree, yes indeed, I had leftovers, so I messaged Alicia saying, all right, I made your wonderful brownies, they were delicious. However, now what am I gonna do with all this extra prune puree? And she messaged back saying, you know what, there are a lot of baked goods recipes all over the internet that include this ingredient, so check around. So I did, I found several, but one was my favorite. But of course, I ended up tweaking this chocolate cake recipe. Now, in her brownies, Alicia said you will taste the prunes in it, and that was true, but it tasted good. In this cake recipe, you don't taste the prunes at all, which I found really interesting. So we're gonna start out making the prune puree from scratch. So here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna need an 8-ounce package of prunes. So of course I went to Aldi and I bought their package of prunes, which is 18 ounces. So I had more than twice as much as what I needed. So I just split these between 2 bowls and just kind of eyeballed it and figured out, okay, this is 8 ounces. Put those into your food processor with a 1/2 cup of water and just turn on the food processor and just let it run for about 5 minutes. The thing is, you want these to get really smooth. You can stop in between to scrape down the sides because the sides will have little pieces of prune on it that you want to get all incorporated. And in the end, it should be really creamy. Now, I go ahead and scrape this into a Tupperware container and put it in the refrigerator while I'm making the rest of the cake. The next thing you're gonna do is prepare the pan. So for this recipe, you're either gonna need 1 round cake pan or 1 square pan. So for round, either an 8-inch or 9-inch, I'm using an 8-inch springform pan. I love using the springform for this because sides come right off. Now you can either grease it with a spray, or I just like to pour in a little vegetable oil and take a paper towel and get that grease around the bottom and or definitely around the sides, but I don't put any flour in it. That's all I do to prepare the pan. Next, we need to get some chocolate heated on the stove. And so what I do is I take a saucepan and put in about a 1/2 inch of water, turn the heat on it, and then I put a heat-proof bowl on it. I just bought some cheap metal bowls years ago and pop that on top and make a double boiler. And then I put the 1 ounce of semi-sweet chocolate into there and I let that melt while I'm making the rest of the cake batter. So now I'm ready for the dry ingredients, and I'm going to put this into a large bowl and I'm going to put it through a sifter. Now, you don't have to use a sifter. If you don't have one or you don't want to pull it out, you can just use a whisk. Now we're going to start out with 1 cup of cake flour. Well, do you really need special cake flour? Not really. You could just use regular flour. But if you want to make your own cake flour, this is what you do. You measure 1 cup of regular flour, you take out 2 tablespoons of that flour and put it back, and then you replace it with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. So we're going to have the flour, some sugar, cocoa powder, baking soda, baking powder, and a pinch of salt, and then I sift it, or if you have a whisk, go ahead and whisk it. And then set that bowl aside. Now we're gonna get a medium bowl and get the wet ingredients going. For the wet ingredients, we're gonna have applesauce, milk, and I'm using almond milk, vanilla extract, and an egg. Then I go ahead and whisk it, and this doesn't take much strength at this point. Then I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of the prune puree and whisk that. That takes a little more muscle power, and if you want to use beaters, you can. Then after the prune puree is mixed in, then my chocolate is all melted. It doesn't look like it's melted, but I just take a rubber spatula or a silicone spatula and touch it, and it will obviously be melty. And I also have a silicone pot holder, but you can use any pot holder because the pan is going to be hot, or the bowl is going to be hot at this point. And I just scrape all of that chocolate, every bit that I can, into the bowl and give it one more whisk. Now I bring my large bowl of dry ingredients over and scrape all of the wet ingredients into it. And at first I tried whisking it, but that's too hard. I just get a spoon, a very large spoon, and stir it. And at this point, the consistency is a lot like a brownie mix. After getting it all incorporated, getting all those dry ingredients, scrape it into the prepared pan and use that rubber spatula or silicone spatula again. Then you're going to bake it for 40 minutes at 350 degrees. After the cake comes out, cool it on a wire rack till it's completely cool. Now, one idea for a frosting is to take a half a cup of Greek yogurt and then more melted semi-sweet chocolate. So you're back to using the pan and the double boiler, only this time you're going to put in 2 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate, let it completely get all melty, and then scrape that melted chocolate into the yogurt and give it a good whisk. Now it's a little tart for me. I mean, it's okay. I'm not a big frosting person, but this is some left over from another time that I made it. So yeah, it's a really pretty color. It smells good. And then you can either top the entire cake with it at one time, or if you want, you can just top one slice at a time just in case you're serving it and some of your family members don't really like frosting. So the little bit of fat in this cake came from grease in the pan, from the 1 ounce of chocolate that's melted, there's a little bit of fat in that, and the egg and the milk. So depending on how much fat is in all of that, but there's no butter and there's no other oil in the cake. The prune puree together with that little bit of applesauce is making up for it. So check the description box below where I have all the ingredients listed out with all of the amounts. And please check out some of my other videos. You can either click the little eye in the upper right hand corner or click one of the 2 images on the right side of your screen. And thanks to Alicia at Mind Over Munch for giving me this great idea, and make sure that you check out her recipe for the low fat, I shouldn't say fat free, low fat brownies. Thanks for watching. Bye.